Good afternoon, everyone. It is such an honor to be with you today at the NAACP's 113th Annual Convention. Before I begin, I'd like to extend my thanks to the NAACP for more than a century of civil rights leadership. From Ida B. Wells to Thurgood Marshall, your storied organization stands on the shoulders of giants. Your efforts in the generations-long struggle for racial justice have brought and continue to bring our nation closer to finally fulfilling its great promise. Thanks in large part to advocates like you, we've made great strides toward that goal. However, much work still lies ahead of us.
We've also launched the Connecting Minority Communities program, which is providing over $260 million to help HBCUs and minority-serving institutions purchase broadband service and equipment, hire IT personnel, and create digital literacy programs.
For the past 2 years, media coverage of healthcare has been dominated by COVID-19. The threat of this coronavirus caused millions of African Americans to put off routine and preventative healthcare to avoid being infected by COVID. Thankfully, vaccines have helped our country get back outdoors and active again. But now, the economic struggles have forced them to reconsider preventive care based on costs now. These decisions could cause minor issues to become major healthcare problems and possibly lead to curable conditions becoming a fatal one. That is why I work so hard and diligently to create awareness of healthcare in our African American communities.
The pandemic exposed that even further. We see just how broken, how many fissures that we have throughout this entire system. And that's something that we need to address. One of these is through the effort right now. We're trying to lower prescription drug costs. This is a top priority. It's one of the biggest things that I hear from people in my district. Seniors paying $400, $500, $600 every single month for prescription drugs. And this isn't like any other thing that one can buy. This isn't one of those things like, this TV is too expensive, so I'm not gonna buy that TV. I'll wait till the prices go down. When people need insulin, they need it every day. When they need certain types of medications, they need it to live. They don't have the ability or the luxury to say, oh, that's too expensive. I'm not going to be able to afford that right now. So that's why when prices get jacked up, when Medicare is not allowed to negotiate drug prices, that's an injustice because people have no choice there except to pay those prices. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we can have the innovation, that we can have the kind of development of new medicines in this country, but do it in a way that treats people fairly.
And the evidence is clear. When people have access to more physical mobility, the result is more social and economic mobility. To this day, though, we see harmful inequities in access to transportation, and our administration refuses to accept the status quo. I need to tell you that in doing our work, I find that not everyone has been ready to hear about equity and justice in the context of transportation. Some have acted as though transportation is somehow uniquely immune to the effects of discrimination and the racial injustices that have affected every other part of our society. So I want to make clear, calling for racial justice in transportation is not divisive. What's divisive is making excuses for the persistence of injustice rather than trying to fix it. And there is a lot of work ahead, good work, that calls out to us to fix it.
Today, nearly 250 years after the Declaration of Independence, all men and women are not treated as equal. Liberty and justice are not afforded to all. For too many Black Americans, this country has not been the land of opportunity, and the American dream remains just that, a dream. Our institutions were not built with Black people in mind, and we are the ones forced to pay that price. When I talk about our institutions, I'm not just talking about government. I'm talking about education. I'm talking about the economy. I'm talking about our healthcare system. To build a more perfect union, we must guarantee that every American has the right to a long, happy, healthy life. In doing so, we must ensure that our most vulnerable communities are not left behind.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Portia White to the podium.
Good afternoon, NAACP leaders, delegates, observers, friends, leaders. I hope you enjoyed the greetings and messages from Representative Bonnie Watson-Coleman, who represents New Jersey's 12th District, Representative Donald Payne Jr. of the 10th District, both esteemed CBC Congressional Black Caucus members, and our friend Andy Kim, Representative Andy Kim from the 3rd District, along with messages from Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. I am Portia Reddick White, and I have the privilege and the honor of serving as NAACP Vice President for Political and Legislative Affairs, Policy and Legislative Affairs. Thank you. These last 3 years, our country, our communities in general have been devastated by the effects of COVID. More than 143,000 Black Americans are known to have lost their lives to COVID-19 through May 2022. Black, Hispanic, American Indian, and Alaska Native people are about twice as likely to have died from COVID. Sadly, data of federal, state, and local have shown that people of color, us, we have experienced a disproportionate burden of cases and deaths. Our community continues to be plagued with chronic health diseases like cancer and diabetes, as well as obesity. It's a health disease that really affects 42% of Black women. We are earnestly in our fight to end health disparities in our community and have been addressing these on every front, with the White House, the Health and Human Services with Secretary Becerra's staff, as well as with Congress with the help of our friends in the Congressional Black Caucus, as well as others who understand dearly the plight in our communities, including these ills of tobacco and how they have elevated and hurt our community. Mental health has taken a toll in our community with the onspread of inadequacies and inequities that face our community. We're working to assist and share the new 988 suicide helpline, as well putting into place and assisting with a plan to transform 911 so that the right people are called at the right time for the right circumstances to help save our communities from further police violence and killings when dealing with situations that really aren't deemed necessary for police assistance. We know that many still can struggle to get access to health care, as 600,000 Black Americans cannot receive Medicaid, as some of their states do not participate in the program. We continue to work to eliminate health disparities, increase access to health care, and engage and inform policymakers to prioritize these major issues that continue to plague us. It's important for us to elect policymakers at the local, state, and federal level who will work in these issues so we can access these health disparities in the proper way so they are not prevalent in our community. So today's discussion and workshop will share how the Biden administration has included and focused on diversity and equity in their policy, as well as their staffing in the areas of housing and labor. As well, we will hear from a congressional friend who is working to assist our HBCUs with the advancements available in technology. However, at this time, I would like to pause and welcome you again and introduce my co-VP of Policy and Legislative Affairs, Ms. Patrice Willoughby. Patrice?
Hello, NAACP. It's wonderful to see you. Welcome to the convention. My colleague Portia has laid out the framing of today's session. I'm Patrice Willoughby, Vice President of Policy and Legislative Affairs at the Association, and we welcome you for today's discussion. It's my honor and privilege to introduce our first speaker, the Honorable Marcia L. Fudge. Secretary Fudge was representative of my hometown of Cleveland, Ohio. That's the 11th District of Ohio. All right, Cleveland in the house. From 2008 to 2021, she's a past chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, the first woman and first African-American mayor of Warrensville Heights, where she directed attention to vacant abandoned buildings and building the economic base of the suburb. And I'm mentioning the economic base because Secretary Fudge understands the links between economics, housing policy, and how policies can help communities to thrive. Housing policy is not razzle-dazzle, but it does affect rates at which we can borrow money, public housing, and at its most basic, the economic base of communities where we live. Most importantly, I know Secretary Fudge as a good friend, a dear friend, and a woman who gives straight answers. In her role as secretary, she has fundamentally challenged the ecosystem that determines housing values in our communities, and this focus will have an effect on ending the racial wealth gap. So it's my honor and privilege to introduce to you the 18th Secretary of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Honorable Marcia L. Fudge.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you so much again. It's a pleasure to be with you. And Patrice and I have been friends for many, many years, and she's a home girl, and I thank you, Patrice, for the introduction. Again, to your leadership, thank you so much for having me. I see some new people down here, Joe Take, and some of these people. Where y'all come from? It's nice to see you all. You know, as secretary, we talk about justice all the time. I say sometimes it's just us. We are the only ones who constantly fight a battle every day in this country. Too many of our young people are born behind the starting line of life, playing catch up from day one, all the time trying to catch up. My job is to make sure that we help. Because as Secretary of HUD, I have that responsibility to help people find a base, a place for which they can have their own dreams and their own aspirations and feel safe. You know, I know that people don't believe government really cares, but we do care. We really do care. I work in an administration that really does care. And this is so very personal to me. I was talking earlier and I was saying that I live in an all-Black neighborhood. That is where I choose to live. I grew up in an all-Black neighborhood. That is where we chose to live. I'm the first college graduate in my family because I had a home where people made me believe I could be anything, that I could do anything. Now, we had 4 families living in that house, but it was my home, and that's all I knew. People moved from the South, they stayed with us till they found some place to go. My great-grandparents, my grandparents, my aunt and uncle and their 6 kids and us, we all lived in the same house. That is what made me understand what family really means. And so every single person in this country should have a safe place to live. It may not be a mansion, but it's just a place where you can go and people accept you for who you are. They don't question who you are, and they accept you and give you the kind of strength and courage that it takes to do well. You know, that's why everybody should have a place that is free of lead, of mold, a place where they can have good jobs and go to good schools. Maya Angelou writes these words, she wants to ease the ache for home that lives in so many people. As HUD Secretary, I know that health, and this is about health and wealth today, begins at home. Your zip code determines more about your health than you can imagine. Your zip code determines your health outcomes. It determines whether you are probably going to go to prison. It determines whether you will be healthy throughout your life. It determines the kind of job you have. Zip codes decide so very much about us. Access to health care. When I was a member of Congress, I represented the best health care in the world. The Cleveland Clinic, university hospitals, Rainbow Babies and Children, and I could go on and on. It was great, except for that we didn't have the access that we should have had. It was there. We have to make sure that we have access to good jobs and good schools. We have to make sure that our communities, no matter where they are, have safe streets. Housing is the most important thing that a government can do and provide. You know, earlier when I was talking about rent, it's because we have not kept up with what we should have in terms of affordable housing. For decades, this nation has not kept up with the number of houses we need. Today, we are short 1.5 million homes from what we need in this country today. And so what my job is to make sure that people have an opportunity. So let me tell you what we are doing, because people think government doesn't work. I work hard, and I work every day. We are requesting an additional 200,000 vouchers so that people won't have to wait years to get into decent housing. We are requesting down payment assistance to the tune of $100 million, because what we know is people can pay their rent. They just don't have the lump sum to put down in down payment. So we're requesting down payment assistance and putting it on the back end of a mortgage so people can get into housing. We are now starting to neutralize student loan debt, because we know that people are deemed not creditworthy because they carry student loan debt. So in our HUD, in my HUD, we're saying we are not going to prevent you any longer from buying a house because you have student loan debt. So we are neutralizing student loan debt. In this HUD, we are saying that not only are we going to help you with your down payment, but we're going to give you a mortgage that's 40 years instead of 30, so that we can make those payments lower, stretch them out over a longer period of time, reduce your interest rate so that you can live decent in a home. That's what's happening in our HUD. In our HUD, we are making sure that the appraisal process works. I'm going to tell you a true story. I live in a house that is 2 doors from an all-white community. I live in an all-black community. My house is literally 2 houses from an all-white community. My house is bigger than the house 2 doors from me. My house has a lot that is larger than the house 2 doors from me. But my home is valued at $25,000 less than the house 2 doors from me. So when we talk about wealth, I am losing $25,000 in equity every single year just because I am black. No other reason, but just because I am black and I live in a black neighborhood. Well, let me tell you what, my house is better than the house 2 doors down from me too. So we are going to have to find ways to make sure that that is changed, and we are doing that as I chair and lead a committee that is looking at the appraisal process. You cannot get a fair appraisal in a black neighborhood when 95% of all of the people who do appraisals are white men. It has to change. That's what we do. That's what happens in our HUD. In our HUD, we are going to ensure that black and brown people have a same shot that everybody else has, because I live in these communities. I can buy a house right now down the street from me for about $50,000, but nobody will loan me that money because we redline neighborhoods like mine. So we don't want to improve neighborhoods. My job is to improve neighborhoods, to build neighborhoods, not to exclude people, but I don't want somebody to come in and buy the house next to me, put it up for rent, and then I can't even afford to rent it myself. We have to build neighborhoods. So all of these vacant properties in cities like mine, we want those houses so that people like me can live in them. and change our neighborhoods. We're going to stop selling these homes to investors who are just going to come in and gentrify our neighborhoods. We're not going to do that anymore. And lastly, what we're going to do is continue to listen to people, to find out what it is we can do better. Because one thing I will not tolerate is allowing people to live in unsafe and unsanitary conditions. I have a lot of family that grew up in public housing. I am not going to let people live in squalor. I am not going to let people live without dignity and respect. I am not going to allow people to believe that this is the best that they can do. That is not what I do. In my HUD, we're going to make a difference. I promise you, because the buck stops with me. Thank you. Thank you. I have some questions. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I'm like President Johnson. I don't know what's on this paper, but I just felt like talking today. Yeah, because I know what we go through. I live this life.
He's going, yeah, as soon as.
Nobody has to tell me about it. I live this life.
Okay.
And so I hear you.
Marty Walsh.
God bless you.
Thank you.
They can't hear you. Is the mic on? Oh, you got it, you got it, you got it.
There we go. So I really appreciated hearing your comments about down payment assistance. We know that student loan debt is one of the biggest barriers for young people. Can you give some insight? We've had some people turn in some questions as they were coming in about the issue of credit and debt to income ratio, and how you're working with the private sector and how you're trying to force some of these changes from your position at HUD.
About 80% of all of the first-time home buyers get their mortgages insured by us at FHA. So if these lenders want to continue to do business with FHA, then they had better change their tune. Because we are not going to continue to allow them to redline, to discriminate. And to their credit, they are saying, yes, we agree. So now you're going to see more programs designed specifically to deal with Black and brown people, with low-income people, because we have said to them, it is not a violation of the law to help people who have historically been discriminated against. Fair housing is the law of the land. By training, I am a lawyer. I am not going to allow them to ignore the law. We are going to make sure that every single person has a fair shot. This is all by design. Systemic racism has been intertwined and interspersed in the federal government for generations. But now it's going to stop at HUD. I can't say nothing about the other ones, but it's going to stop at HUD. So they want to work with us. They really do. So is that answering your question?
That answers it perfectly, okay. And I think that's a wrap. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrice.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you so much.
So, you guys enjoying it so far? Wonderful. Got somebody else to bring up for you. So, Martin J. Walsh, our Labor Secretary, was sworn in as the 29th Secretary of Labor on March 23rd, 2021. He's a lifelong champion of equity and fairness and a proud product of the city of Boston. You know where we're going next year? Boston. Secretary Walsh leads the U.S. Department of Labor with a strong connection to working people and a commitment to creating an economy that works for all. In 1997, he was elected to serve as a state representative for one of the most diverse districts in Massachusetts. There, he focused on creating good jobs, protecting workers' rights, expanding mental health treatment, and investing in public transit. Following his time as state representative, Secretary Walsh spent the last 7 years as the mayor of the city of Boston. While mayor, he led the creation of close to 140,000 jobs and helped secure a statewide $15 an hour minimum wage, paid sick leave, and paid paternal leave. He established universal, high-quality pre-kindergarten for all children and free community college for low-income students. That's what I'm talking about, right? He speaks what he does. He talks his speak. Secretary Walsh was a national leader in the response to COVID-19, getting PPE to first responders and nursing homes, funding emergency child care for healthcare and frontline workers, halting evictions and providing rental relief, and setting up multiple funds to help small businesses survive. His work early in the pandemic to pause construction and establish safety requirements has been lauded as a model by both unions and employers alike. As mayor of Boston, Secretary Walsh also made his mark as a labor leader. I had to read that part because I come from labor, y'all. After following his father into Laborers Local 223 in Boston, he rose to the head of the Building and Construction Trades Council from 2011 to 2013. He worked with business and community leaders to promote high-quality development, and he created a program called Building Pathways that's become a model for increasing diversity in the workplace and providing good career opportunities for women and people of color. Born and raised in the neighborhood of Dorchester by immigrant parents, I present to you Secretary Walsh.
Thank you, Portia. Thank you. You're the best. And I'm just taking questions from the crowd when they come in. Okay, all right. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, Portia. Thank you for that introduction. I want to give a shout out to President Johnson for your partnership and your leadership. To everyone here, the boards of directors, the officers, the state leaders, the local leaders, the delegates from all over this great country, to all the members of this great and historic organization, thank you very much. I have to give a couple shout outs. One is as the day goes on, you get a chance to go outside. We have a DOL booth that's here outside. Some of the folks I work with every day are in the front row here, so I want to thank them. If you have any questions about appropriations, policy, vets, economists, anything you want, we will answer any questions you have. So please come out and talk to our team. And I don't see them here, but I have to give two shout outs in particular. One is to Michael Curry, the former president of NAACP Boston. I have to give Michael Curry, I know he's a board member, and Tanisha Sullivan. And she's probably campaigning right now in Massachusetts, so I want to give a shout out to both of those folks and to all the Boston folks that are here. I know you might not be in the room, but I got some texts, some folks I work with City Hall down the back there. I love you guys and I miss you guys, so it's great to see you here. Last time I actually get a chance to speak at the Naacp Convention was back in 2019. It was when I had a chance to stand on the stage and accept the convention coming to Boston in 2020. It was awesome. It was one of the proudest moments I had as mayor of the city of Boston. Due to the pandemic, we weren't able to host the convention, but next year we're going to host a convention in Boston. And no disrespect to Atlantic City or Detroit, but it's going to be the best convention you guys ever had. So I just want to say that. But it remains a big milestone. It remains a big milestone because of how important this historic organization is. And I will always be grateful for your trust and partnership in making that happen. To be here now as Labor Secretary is another profound honor. The achievements of the NAACP are woven fabric of Americans' history. They are the essential to our future as well. President Biden said on the day he was inaugurated, "We set our sights on a nation we know we can be and we must be." Today is more than ever probably in our lifetime, the NAACP focuses our sights on justice and the light leading us forward. With your partnership and President Biden's leadership, also, by the way, how about a round of applause for Secretary Fudge? She's awesome. I meant to start saying that. All right, I love her. She's the best. And I guess you had another, celebrity this morning, the Vice President of the United States of America, Vice President Harris. I was late because the motorcade stopped me going in. I don't mind being stopped in that motorcade. I also want to give a shout out to the Vice President who clearly is working extremely hard on behalf of all Americans. But the NAACP, I know, in her heart means so much more. And also President Biden's leadership and Vice President Harris' leadership, we're experienced, regardless of what you read or what you see or hear, we have experienced incredible historic economic recovery. We have put power back in the hands of working people to seek better opportunities. And some of the greatest gains are going to workers in low-wage workers who are disproportionately women and people of color. But we set our sights even higher, and I know all of you do as well. Economic justice is still not the reality in our labor market or in the lives of too many Black Americans. We are fighting good middle class, we're fighting for good middle class, wealth building jobs in every single community. The president filed an executive order right when he took over, making sure that we're advancing racial equity. It's an important part of our framework for the Department of Labor. We see equity as a fundamental mission in America's economic success. We have been committed to putting equity into action from day one across all different departments and cabinets. We're working from labor protections to unemployment protections to job training to retirement securities, and we're doing so much more than that. We're seeking to remove any barriers that exist in our ability to serve working people. And we're lifting up workers in communities who have been denied opportunities for too long. We see economic justice as an essential reason to support every worker's right to form and join a union. When workers join together and bargain together with their employers, they can establish equal pay for equal work, equal opportunities for advancement for all. They can address discrimination and harassment, and we can secure paid leave and good pensions. That's why workers in unions earn more and have better health care and retirement security than workers without unions. The data shows that the impacts are positive. It's even greater for workers of color. Union reduces wage gaps and wealth gaps because labor rights are civil rights on the job and in the economy. And it's no surprise that today we're seeing a wave of worker organizing is being led in many cases by Black workers, workers of color, and women. This organization, the NAACP, has a long successful history of standing with working people who are trying to organize. President Johnson has been a true leader in this area. President Ray Curry in the front row here, my dear friend from the UAW, and Civil Rights Director Robert Williams from the UFCW, who are co-chairs of the NAACP Labor Caucus. I want to thank them for the work that they do, and I have a chance to get a front row seat to see the amazing work they do. This administration, the Biden-Harris administration, is certainly a proud partner to bring these benefits of collective bargaining to more workers. I just want to take a second to take you back to my time as mayor of Boston. When I was the mayor of Boston, I got elected in 2014. Before that, I was a state representative, as you heard. I ran the building trades, I created programs. And right after, during the pandemic, we were rolling as a city. People weren't working, but we were keeping people safe. We were getting masks, we were getting gloves to facilities, we were working with organizations, and we were really focused in communities that didn't have support. And then George Floyd got killed. And when George Floyd got killed, as a mayor, as a white mayor, I felt that I needed to come up and talk about something that can put people at ease. But I realized that there was nothing I could say at that particular moment that people haven't heard before. So what I did was, we did Zoom, and some of the folks here from City Hall were there. I went on Zoom, and I talked to my Black coworkers, and I gave people an opportunity, a space, to talk about how they're feeling and what they're experiencing. And what I heard was sadness and anger and fear and conflict. And in some cases, the younger workers were saying how frustrated they were that the civil rights didn't finish the job. And they talked about why are they still dealing in 2020 with the ramifications of racism and sexism in some cases. And I listened to everyone. And our reaction was complete with all of us. Our action was not about coming up with a speech or doing a particular policy, because that's been done in the past. Our action was embedding our work within the city of Boston, throughout the city of Boston. When I got asked to be Secretary of Labor by the President of the United States of America, and the President, before I became the Secretary, he had signed the Executive Order at Equity. And I had taken the experiences that I've had as a white man to DOL and talking to folks that I work with every day. I can't live in somebody's shoes and I can't see through their eyes, but I certainly can understand and do everything I can about the pain and suffering and how do we make things better. And our role at the Department of Labor and our role in this government needs to be to do more. Our role is truly, truly do more in equity, do more in inclusion, do more in closing the gaps, to making sure that America truly is the land of opportunity for all. And last week, 2 weeks ago actually, I had a chance to go down to Little Rock, Arkansas, and I went down to the Delta region of the Mississippi. And when I was down, I think there's a clock here somewhere, and I'm sorry if I blew through my time, but up there, I got a few minutes. And I went to the Delta region in Little Rock. So I started in Little Rock, and I was taken to the Little Rock Central High School. And as I was going to the high school, I knew what obviously happened at Little Rock High School. Little Rock and I went to school there in 1957. But before I went into the high school, we went over to the Civil Rights Museum. And on the wall, I saw in the Civil Rights Museum, the pictures we all see. The pictures of colored water fountain, colored counter, colored sit in the back. I saw all that, the segregation of what America was back in 1957 and before that. That night, I went to the Delta region of the Mississippi, and I had a meeting with some workers that night, nine workers, 8 women, 1 man, and they were talking about what they're facing on the job with sexism and discrimination and and lack of wages. And I had a chance to sit at a table and talk to 4 women in particular, and I asked them, what is a good wage in Mississippi? And they were very serious, and one woman said, $15 an hour is a great wage. And I thought to myself, $15 an hour is a great wage. I don't know how many people in this auditorium think $15 an hour is a good wage. It's not a good wage. It's not a good wage to raise a family. It's not a good wage to move your family forward. And I left there, and that meeting left an impact on me. The next morning, I went with Congressman Thompson, we went to meet with some farmers, 7 African-American farmers who have the history of between 20 and 40 years working in the fields, picking vegetables and cotton and everything in the fields, breaking their back and hurting their hands. And they were talking about how workers were coming to this country through a visa program and taking their jobs. But what struck me the most, with all of that being said, the farmers said this to me. On some of the farms in the Delta region of Mississippi, if you're a white South African farmer on a visa, you can go to the bathroom on the inside. If you're a black farmer from the Mississippi, you need to go to the bathroom on the outside. And I thought to myself at that particular moment, as somebody who's in government and spent 26 years in government, we need to do something more. And you are the leaders in your states, you are the leaders in your councils, you are leaders in this country, and you need to keep putting our feet to the fire, keep calling us out to make sure we're doing the job that we're supposed to be doing, because we're going to continue to work in the Department of Labor and moving forward. I'm going to end on this. This spring at the Department of Labor, we issued an equity action plan. It describes the work that we've done, and it lays out our steps for the next programs. I would encourage all of you to find it at dol.gov/equity. I invite you to read it. But more importantly, I ask you for your feedback. I ask you to be honest and tell us exactly what you think of that report, how it's working, is it good, what can we do better, and we're not going to be insulted by it. My team is committed to developing not just an open dialogue, but actually making a change in this country. Making a change for the little ones in our countries. They don't have to have the same conversation with their mayor someday or with somebody in their office saying, I'm disappointed that we're at this point in our life. It's 2022. It's 2022. It's time for us as a nation to do more. It's time for us as a government to do more. And again, I want to thank all of you for the opportunity to speak at this convention next year. I can't wait for you to get to Boston next year. You're going to have one hell of a time in the city of Boston. I'm just saying. Sorry, Atlantic City. But I just want to end by saying thank you all, honestly, for the work you do. When Michael Curry was the president of the Boston chapter, I've known Michael for a long time. Michael pushed me as mayor, and we did some great things. When Tanisha Sullivan took over, we were fighting actually sometimes, but we both ended on the same page. When I left being mayor of Boston, Tanisha Sullivan and myself, we're and our dear friends. And I want you to continue to do the same thing, because the people in our world, people in our communities, not just the black people, the entire nation needs a strong, united NAACP. Thank you and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, yes. So you brought a team with you today, right?
Yes, I did. They're right there in the front row. I don't want to embarrass you, but just give a wave if you want.
Wonderful. And not only did he bring his team, but he brought some wage and hour information as well as, is it Good Jobs? The
Good Jobs Initiative, Wage and Hour. We have Andrea Oliver, who is my associate. Andrea actually, I didn't know her before I became the Secretary of Labor. She preps me for all of my budget hearings. She is awesome. She understands me. I understand her. Thank you, Andrea, for the great work you do. Taryn Williams runs our office, ODEP. It's really our Office of Disabilities. I want to thank Taryn for the amazing work that Taryn does, making sure that people have complete equity across the country. Joelle Gamble is our economist. She's been with us for a few months. I want to thank Joelle, who's with us today. Joelle is the one who tells me and helps me understand the economy and how we move forward. Julian Purdy, Chief of Staff. Julian from Vets is here. Any veterans questions you have? I know there's a lot of vets. Thank you for your service in the room here. Yudochi from Policy Advisor, Wage and Hour. Yudochi from Policy Advisor is here. Caitlin Wakamooney, she snuck out. She's behind the scenes. She doesn't want to be seen. I'm missing somebody. Who am I missing? I got Chike, right there. Chike is here as well. So if you have any questions about anything, please. We were trying to do a meeting up here where we're going to sit up here and ask questions, take questions, but we came up at the last minute, so it didn't work out.
Didn't work out that way, but they are at the Experience Center.
Oh.
Please make sure you go over there and visit them afterwards. They do have a table set up.
Can I just, I didn't mean to cut you off. I didn't turn the sheet over. Chike, you're on the back here. Emma Eatman is my press secretary. Emma is here as well. And Raquel Jackson, she's our advanced associate. Raquel actually helps me get around the country and do what I'm supposed to do and yells at me to read my briefings.
Well, they've all been helpful to us. So thank you for bringing them. So thank you. But we do have at least one question that I would love to ask you. And if anyone else in the audience here has a question, I know that Ashley has been collecting cards, but here we go. In 2019, author Ta-Nehisi Coates addressed Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, articulating the need for capital and reparations for African Americans. Does the Labor Cabinet see an active way to support capital deployment to African Americans to elevate Black economy and households?
Yeah, let me, certainly do. And I think I told a little bit about our work in the South. And when I say my work, my visit to the South last week, 2 weeks ago, and what we're going to be doing, focusing not just on businesses, but creating wealth and power in those communities and giving people a voice so they're going to have a support by the Department of Labor. In the state of Mississippi, it does not have a state Department of Labor. We are adopting that state. We're going down that state, both in giving workers power and understanding, letting workers speak up and say what they need to say without fear of, intimidation or retaliation. We're going to do that. Also, in the Good Jobs Initiative, I would ask you to look at the Good Jobs Initiative. When you think about the Good Jobs Initiative, it's not a mandate. What it really is, we thought about when we put together the infrastructure bill the president passed, that law, and the investments, $1.2 trillion, $550 billion into construction. We said, how do we make sure that all communities benefit from that? How do we make sure we give opportunities and pathways, particularly for women and people of color, into those building trades, into those union jobs, into those opportunities? And in the Good Jobs Initiative, it's a cabinet across the cabinet, and it really is about, it's a set of principles, if you will, across the cabinet. As I mentioned earlier about politics, equity, executive order is great and wonderful, and we love it, but what's that backed up with? It's actually backed up with a policy that's going to be incorporated across the different cabinets as we move forward. We've also fought, the president filed an executive order to raise the federal minimum wage to $50 an hour, which means we got rid of the sub-minimum wage and the tip wages, which is directly in the United States history, Congress history of the memos, direct connection to slavery. So we want to do everything we can to make sure that we're doing everything we can. And lastly, the Department of Labor, certainly support there's a study right now in front of the United States Senate and Congress that looks at reparations, and I fully support that 100%. And lastly, when I was mayor of Boston, we were beginning to have that same conversation. What do we do here? We were talking about it, and my Office of Equity in the city was working on it, and then I got taken down here, so that conversation will be ongoing.
Thank you so much. We could have a conversation all day, and we've got others that are going to come out. But what I want to say is we look forward to continuing this conversation in
Absolutely.
Boston, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to invite Patrice Willoughby to come back and announce and introduce our next participant. Patrice?
My microphone back there, but I think you can hear me if I speak loudly. Congressman Ro Khanna represents the 17th District of California that he's represented since 2017. That is Santa Clara, which is the heart of Silicon Valley. He sits on the Agriculture, Armed Services, and Oversight Committees. And one of the reasons that we wanted to have Congressman Khanna is that he represents a strong example of allyship. In his work as a whip, assistant whip in the U.S. House of Representatives, he works with Congressman Jim Clyburn, who is our Spingarn Award recipient this year. Congressman Khanna and Congressman Clyburn are working on a program to enhance the STEM pipeline at Claflin University at HBCUs. And we think it's really important to showcase this work because we welcome the partnership with allies and partners from every group. So with that, we'd like to welcome to the stage Congressman Ro Khanna from Santa Clara, California.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrice. Thank you for the very kind introduction. It's wonderful to see your convention, the NAACP, honoring Whip Clyburn later this week. He is a true giant and mentor, and thank you to President Johnson for his leadership. I have a very simple message today representing Silicon Valley. We cannot overcome the racial wealth gap in this country if we do not overcome the racial wealth generation gap. $10 trillion is the market cap of my district. Apple, Google, Intel, Yahoo, Cisco, LinkedIn, Tesla. Let me be very blunt. There is not nearly the representation of the Black community in the industries of the future that they should be. Less than 1% of venture capital is going to young Black and women entrepreneurs, less than 1%. Now, if the Black community was excluded from the prosperity of the agricultural revolution, excluded from the prosperity of the industrial revolution, shame on us if the Black community is going to be excluded from the prosperity of the digital revolution. We have a major challenge, 25 million new digital jobs by 2025. These are the new jobs in manufacturing, in retail, in healthcare, in education. And yet these opportunities aren't available to many people graduating from the HBCUs or graduating who are young women and young men who are entrepreneurs. You know what? Of course we have to speak about voting rights in this country. Of course we have to speak against being able to go outside and not get shot at by police. But you know what? Young Black men and women have the same dreams as kids in my district. We've got to speak about how they're going to get good jobs, how they're going to have their businesses financed, how they're going to be prosperous in a 21st century economy. And we haven't had an intentionality in doing that. I've gone down to the Black South. I met a delegation from Atlanta to the gathering spot and with Mayor Dickens. There's a hunger there. There's an ambition there. They want to participate. They need the avenues to be able to do so. If you want to get more funding for Black entrepreneurs and Black tech leaders, the first thing we need to do is have more Black venture capitalists writing the checks, more women writing the checks. We can do that if we actually had tax policy that incentivized that. Let me tell you about a small thing I've been doing with Whip Clyburn. We worked with Google and we worked with Zoom to partner with Claflin. Does anyone know here Claflin down in South Carolina, an HBCU? All right. And we've been partnering with Jackson State and with Miles. And I'll tell you what the program is. It's simple. They come, the Google and these companies, they come, they pay a stipend of $5,000 for the young student who wants to participate. They design with the HBCU a course for 18 months. And at the end of it, the person who participates will get a job, paying $65,000 a year. Now, they have a mentor. You know why a lot of the folks, they aren't getting hired? Because they've never done the whiteboard interviews before. There's a cultural bias in being hired at these companies. That is fixable if we have actual programs and the talent is there. We're hurting ourselves against China and other countries by not recruiting that talent. So I ask you, why can't we have a goal in this country? By 2025, have 1 million Black Americans in digital jobs. It's doable if we just get all of the HBCUs and technology companies partnering to give economic opportunity. It is one of the things that will also allow us to be competitive with countries that have billions of people that we're competing against. And it is one of the ways that we will actually help build wealth, build opportunities. You know, one of the things that saddens me, you look at some of the statistics, and young Black and Latino men and women are the most invested, disproportionately invested in cryptocurrencies. I'm not saying cryptocurrencies are bad investments, or good investments, I don't know, the future. But I'll tell you something, I was asking someone, why is that? And they said it's their only way for many of them to participate in the new economy, because they're not asked to get in the friends and family rounds. They're not investing in the new technology companies. You know, we've got to offer young Black students and young Black women and men more opportunity to build wealth in a new economy than just investing in cryptocurrency. It's sad that that is the only thing that they think about, is how they can build wealth in a modern economy. You know, I had the great honor with the late John Lewis of doing an op-ed when he was there. I had told him my story. And I told him that my grandfather spent 4 years in jail during the Gandhi's independence movement in the 1940s. And Mr. Lewis said, you know, do you know who Reverend Lawson is? I said, I don't know who Reverend Lawson is. He said, Reverend Lawson, who's still living, went to India in the 1930s and learned about the nonviolence movement, and then came back and helped Dr. King actually learn about what Gandhi was doing with nonviolence. Dr. King carried 2 books with him at all times, the Bible and the Gandhi Reader. And Reverend Lewis helped, Reverend Lawson helped John Lewis also be familiarized with Gandhi's teachings. Why do I say all of this? Because if it weren't for the civil rights movement marching, my parents wouldn't have been allowed to come to America. The civil rights movement led to the 1965 Immigration Reform Act. Before the 65 Immigration Act, basically people from India and China weren't allowed to come to the United States. There were very, very strict quotas. It was Dr. King, John Lewis, who paved the way for that to happen. And you know what happened when a lot of the Indians came here? They didn't get to teach at Stanford or Harvard. Guess who hired them? The HBCUs. It's one of the reasons you have many Indian faculty at HBCUs. It's the only place they could get a job. So now I talk to some of my friends, the Indian Americans who become CEOs of these tech companies, and I say, don't forget history. Don't forget history. John Lewis said to me, and we wrote in the op-ed, technology rights are the new civil rights. I believe that deeply. I do not think we can go the current way and having an entire community excluded from the opportunities that I see every day people in my district having. The Black community publicized Clubhouse, popularized it. Ask yourself, how many of them are in the boardrooms? How many of them are getting executive positions? How many of them are making profits? It's wrong, and it's hurting our country, and it's solvable if we create more of a program to get young people these opportunities and jobs and funding and allow them to flourish, allow them to express their creativity. You know, young Black women and men have more of an interest in technology and startups than on average white or Asians, according to the studies, yet they're being denied that opportunity. This is a solvable issue, and it's an issue we must tackle in the 21st century to help bring this country together. I am most struck, one of the greatest speeches in American history is Frederick Douglass, Composite Nation. It's as great as, the Gettysburg Address or Lincoln's second inaugural, but it just doesn't get talked about as much. Think about this. Frederick Douglass, after being enslaved for 20 years in 1869, defends the right of Chinese immigrants to come to the United States of America. He says, I want to make sure that in America, people can come from around the world, because in the free air of America, our country will thrive, and all of the best traditions will be here. Frederick Douglass in 1869 was thinking not just about those who were enslaved, he was thinking about people from around the world and their rights to build a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy. Here's the thing that struck me the most. In 1869, he's giving this speech, and Douglass says, I believe America is on the ascent. Think about the courage that took to believe a few years after slavery that America would become this multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy. But he believed to do that, we all had to have the opportunity to contribute not just economically, but to contribute to the culture of the nation. Right now, we still are not having that economic opportunity. We're still not giving people the opportunity to flourish with their talents, to live up to Douglass's powerful vision in Composite Nation. I believe we can do that in our generation. I believe we're producing more wealth than we've ever before. We've got more hunger and ambition than we ever have for these opportunities. And if we truly want to build a multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy, we have to start with fundamental economic opportunity and economic empowerment of every community. That is what motivates my work in Silicon Valley. That is why I'm so honored that the NAACP has not just invited me to speak, but is partnering with me to help create these jobs. I believe this can't just be government, it can be all of us. But let us work together to create the opportunities in a 21st century economy for all those people who are watching, who have the ambition, who have the drive, who just want the opportunity to have the same shot at the American dream that many young people in my district have. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And Robin, come back and take.
Congressman Khanna, thank you so much for those words. So welcome. That's what I really call a Black-Gold alliance. So we have a couple of questions. Universities, we know, depend heavily on federal funding to recruit the best student candidates. But there are always disparities between HBCUs and predominantly white institutions. What suggestions do you have to mitigate these inequities, to improve the funding streams for HBCUs?
Well, we should pass Whip Clyburn's bill as a start, which would provide $10 billion into the HBCUs. And President Biden and Vice President Harris have been for that. That was part of Build Back Better. And that kind of investment is long overdue. And then I think we ought to make sure that all of our major corporations and companies are partnering with the HBCUs directly so that they have recruitment and job opportunities and funding there.
Thank you. Thank you. This means that everyone has to go out and vote. We need the House to remain in some hands that have interests of our communities. Second question, how can HBCUs better leverage local school district talent in school districts to improve the pipeline for STEM? You know, it starts locally, it starts small, it starts young. And so we want to improve that pipeline.
Well, the first thing we need to make sure is that people have the right technology and opportunities. I was talking to someone, a young girl at an HBCU at Spelman College. She said so many of her classmates didn't have a laptop until they got to college. We can't recruit the talent if we're not giving people the opportunity. We need to make sure everyone in this country has access as a young person to a laptop and to high-speed internet access. You know, I ask people, come to Silicon Valley, and it's not that these folks were geniuses, some of them are, but it's that they had computers when they were 2 years old. They had an exposure when they were 3 years old. You know, it's like Tiger Woods. If you're playing golf at 2, you're probably going to be good. There are a lot of people in this country who simply don't have the exposure. And then the second thing is, okay, they have the exposure, you get to an HBCU, are you really going to go pursue this if you don't know that you're going to get a job? I'll just be honest. We were working with Whip Clyburn. You know, Claflin University was sending me their 4.0 students, and they kept getting not qualified. I said, what are you doing? Why aren't these folks qualified? They finally said, well, they aren't doing the right way of interviewing. So we have to overcome the cultural barriers. Otherwise, students aren't going to be motivated by the time they get to college to even pursue these opportunities. And the final thing we need is role models. One of the great things we've seen in these programs that succeed is they have a mentor at these tech companies that one-on-one that's encouraging them so that they see that those are real opportunities for them. And I think if we do all of those things, we will be able to succeed in getting people these opportunities.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Please welcome back to the stage, Portia White.
Thank you so much. It's been a very, I think, delightful, but yet full of information type of workshop today. So I'm glad that we've had this opportunity. So I get the opportunity to invite back someone that you all know, very well. It just so happened that in November of 2021, he hired me. And it's been a joy, a wonderful joy, working for the NAACP under the leadership of President Derrick Johnson. And I welcome back to the stage. You all know him well, President Johnson.
Do I need that or that's good? Okay. Good afternoon. Test, can y'all hear me? Test. Oh, yeah, that's all. So good afternoon. You know, the beautiful thing about this program, I'm going to ask Portia and Patrice, I want to surprise them. They can come back to the stage. Portia and Patrice. Yes. So as you all know, as we continue to evolve the staffing of the NAACP, we were fortunate enough to get these ladies right over here. Make me look good on both sides here. And they agreed to come on board. What's significant about them agreeing is the wealth of knowledge, relationships, and skill we now have in running our Washington office. Washington, D.C. is a place of relationships, and if you don't have relationships, you can't get in the door. But then once you're in the door, it also is a town of skill. And if you don't have any skill, you're just sitting in the room. And then there's this thing called know-how. If you have some skills, and you're in the door, and you have some know-how, you can actually get some legislation passed. And so we have, what both of them are, individuals who have both skill, know-how, and relationships. Portia coming out of the former leader of the Senate's staff, Harry Reid, and Patrice being a former chief of staff of Stephanie Tubbs Jones and the executive director of CDC. They can go from the White House to cabinet members to the Senate, all the way across to the House. That's important. So as you see these two ladies here, these are your vehicles for your voice on federal policy. So let's give them a hand. Let's give them a hand. And then finally, they are already thinking through, how do we make sure we push knowledge down to our units, but more importantly, how do we make sure we receive information from our units to push up to members of Congress? Because oftentimes, DC political shops in the nonprofit space, they are talking to themselves. They talking to their counterparts. 98% of them lack any relationship to communities. They don't know people, they don't have members, and so they only project what they think we need. What we have now is the ability to know what's needed across the country, whether you're in Anchor in Ohio, one day I'm gonna learn how to talk with perfect diction, Anchor in Ohio, or in Miami, Florida. We have a clear pipeline, and as we evolve and develop and perfect this, our voices will be stronger on Capitol Hill. Final point between them, and I haven't even shared this with them, they probably will, out of some magic, they're gonna find some money, and we're gonna start having annual NAACP at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. Why is that important? Hey, Miranda, why is that important? Because if they don't see you, they can't hear you, and if they can't hear you, they don't think about you. Right? When the Voting Rights Act was reauthorized in 2006, it was a direct result of the Naacp Convention being held in DC, realizing that the bill was going to be considered in the Senate, and we bought 3,000 yellow t-shirts and we marched to the Capitol, went to the Senate. Who all was there? Y'all remember that? See, Reno, Nevada was in the house, and we went there. That's right. Derek Ford was there. We went there, and for some of the members of the Senate of whatever political persuasion who was trying to duck and dodge, you cornered them. You flooded their office. I remember my senator, Trent Lott, who was the devil reincarnated at the time. The delegation found him in the basement of the Senate, because that's how you go up the elevator, and it's about the size of this podium. And 50 y'all cousins surrounded that fella. He just said, okay, I'll support it. The bill passed 98-0. That was the power of them seeing you, hearing you, because we was present. So they don't know this yet, but they're gonna be organized a day at the Capitol, NAACP Day at the Capitol. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you.
So as we move forward, we want to thank Secretary Fudge, who lit it up this morning and came back this afternoon, Secretary Walsh, to talk about, federal investments in our community and what we need to do, to Congressman O'Connor, who joined us from the stage. He's leaving right now because he got votes tomorrow. And a person who really, really wanted to be here was Senator Cory Booker. Now, the U.S. Senate is a 50-50 Senate. And if any member is not present, that's how you lose a key vote or they push something out there that on surprise. And trust me, both sides are watching. They know if somebody's not going to be there and say, oh, let's put this bill on the floor. They know this, right? And so when I talked to Senator Booker, he said, I can't be there. We got votes on today, but I'm going to send a video. And so we're going to play the video, but trust me, and I talk to Senator Booker quite frequently. He loved the state of New Jersey. He loved the community that we represent, and he's a big supporter of the NAACP. So I'm going to ask the producers to play the video, and thank you all very much.
Hi, everyone. What a pleasure and truly humble honor to extend a warm New Jersey welcome to the 113th NAACP Convention. I am honored to thank you for being in New Jersey because it creates a full circle of sorts. It was a century ago, nearly 100 years to the day, in 1922, that the NAACP hosted its 13th annual conference in the state of New Jersey for the first time. In fact, it took place in the city I call home for the last quarter century, Newark, New Jersey. You all graced them with your presence then. I doubt any of us were around, but there were people like William Pickens, James Weldon Johnson, and W.E.B. Du Bois there in Newark, there in New Jersey. We know much has changed in this century, but the one thing that's remained constant through it all is this organization's mission, its fundamental creed, which has helped to change this nation for the better, helped to mold this country into a more just place for more. We have a lot to celebrate because since the founding of the NAACP in 1909, it has been this organization that has inspired the moral imagination of America and helped us to achieve our closer progress to our dream. You all have been involved today in an organization. It's a remarkable organization. If there was no NAACP, there would be no me. And so many of the accomplishments we hold dear. We know that this country is a dream in progress that still has a long way to go. As Langston Hughes says, there's a dream in this land with his back against the wall. To save the dream for one, we must save the dream for all. And if we are thinking with that lens, we know that we have a lot of work to make America, as Langston Hughes says, be America again, the land that never has been yet, but yet must be. And so I admit to you my disappointment. We are seeing so many of the gains of the past really be eroded. We're starting to not only roll back, but also continue to fall short of some of the goals and ambitions we have for this amazing multicultural democracy we call America. We are just a few weeks removed from multiple Supreme Court decisions that will impact all Americans, and Black Americans in particular. For one, the Supreme Court has moved us further away from reaching our urgent climate goals. And when you hear the word climate, think about environmental justice. Because we know often in communities of color, it's environmental injustice like toxic air that is poisoning our children, causing respiratory problems and asthma rates. Even Black communities along the coastal lines are facing some of the most severe impacts of climate change, which are causing devastation and destruction through flooding and hurricanes. Vulnerable populations, many of them African American, suffering and struggling with the reality that the Supreme Court has now made it harder for us to deal with. On top of that, the court rolled back a law designed to curb the epidemic of gun violence that is, again, too common in our communities. This, just a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court moved after a deadly shooting at a supermarket in Buffalo that took the lives of 10 precious souls, and a shooting in Uvalde, Texas, that took the lives of 19 beautiful children and 2 incredible teachers. And then, of course, the Supreme Court defied nearly 50 years of legal precedent by stripping Americans of one of the most fundamental freedoms, the right to decide what happens to your own body, the right of bodily autonomy. And though Americans of all backgrounds and beliefs are reeling, the majority of Americans believing the law of the land, Roe v. Wade, should have stayed, we know that the Dobbs decision is going to impact mostly those vulnerable women that don't have the ability to travel, don't have the ability to access medication and more. As a study published in December by Drake University showed, a complete ban on abortion could increase Black maternal deaths by 33%. Let's be clear. Reproductive rights are part of a quality, affordable healthcare that everyone should be having access to. We must protect each other. We must protect this nation against an onslaught, against a court that has now moved more radically to the right, against what they are going to do to undermine constitutional rights, like the right to vote, like the right to control your own body, like the right to organize a union. A lot of the benchmark rights of our nation are now under threat as the Supreme Court is loosening these regulations and undermining so much of the moral standing in our nation that we agree on, that the majority of Americans agree on. And so now it's up to us again, this organization with a rainbow coalition of others, we have got to begin to again inspire the moral imagination of our nation. We've got to stand for those who are often rendered invisible, who are neglected, who are looked down upon. We've got to stand in our role to be light workers in a dark time, to be tireless and indefatigable in our work, to be tired, but really sick and tired of being tired, to say enough is enough. We have unfinished work to do. This has been a century since the first meeting in New Jersey. This now is a time to give the same clarion call of folks like W.E.B. Du Bois, the same clarion call of those who came before us to rally our nation, all of its people, towards justice. I want to thank you all for understanding how difficult this work is, and that it's all about mobilizing and informing and organizing folks around this country. Because we know, especially in the NAACP, that when we lift every voice and vote and work and sing, that we can win fights, we can advance this nation, we can make a difference. And so I want you to know that in dark times, we can be the light, that in times of despair, we can be the hope, that in times of pain, we can renew a sense of collective purpose. Now, I've spoken about how the Supreme Court and its decisions have left many disappointed. But I will tell you this, there's something about the Supreme Court, just days after some of these rulings were issued, that there is something that happened that should give us hope. And a magnificent woman named Ketanji Brown Jackson, when she assumed her place as the 116th Justice of the highest court in the land, and the first time ever an African-American woman has ascended to the highest court. We must celebrate this moment that invoked a spirit of our invincible joy. And we know that this accomplishment was achieved because of the work we have done. This is not a time to despair. This is a time to see signs of progress and let them fortify us and fuel us to get more progress happening. I tell you, Ketanji Brown Jackson, the magnificence that she is. I love the saying my mom said is, "Who you are speaks so loudly I can't hear what you said." She speaks to our ancestors' pain. She speaks to that alchemy, that magic of people all throughout our history who turned the darkest moments into the dawn. She is a sign that our ancestors are still rejoicing in us, and that we have the capacity to bend the arc of the moral universe more towards justice. I will tell you something that I am so proud of. I'm proud that this nation has so many heroes, and so many Black heroes, who in times like this instruct our heart. Women, yes, like Ketanji Brown Jackson, but women before her, like Ella Baker, like Harriet Tubman, like Fannie Lou Hamer. People who instruct us that hope ultimately is the active conviction that despair will never have the last word. People that instruct us that weeping may endure through the night, but joy, joy cometh in the morning. People who instruct us that faith unbroken, faith invincible, even the size of a mustard seed, can move the mountains of oppression and make them plain and open and wide with opportunity. I know a lot of us are worried now. I know a lot of us are fearing right now, but courage is not the absence of fear or worry. It is going on despite it all. Let us look forward to the days ahead. Let us be prepared for the work and the challenges before us. We know from our ancestors that this nation is a screaming testimony to the perpetual achievement of impossible things. And that's what we need right now. Hopeful, bold, ambitious, audacious belief in what we can achieve together, because we can overcome. We shall rise. We will make our nation truly one where justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with you there in New Jersey. May God bless you. May God keep you. And may God always look over and protect one of the most cherished institutions of justice that America has ever known, the NAACP. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Booker. That was awesome. So I wish this room were full, but it's not. But I want to leave a message with all of you. Things that he said, we have to protect each other. And the message that Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson taught us was that we have to persevere. We will persevere, right? So I want you to repeat after me as we leave this room. I want you all to understand that we have to use our power. We have to stand. We have to use our voice. So repeat after me. It's I will stand. I will vote. And I will voice my power. We're going to do it again. And I want you to yell it to the tops of your lungs, all right? I will stand. I will vote, and I will voice my power. Good afternoon. Thank you.